This week we have 4 notable transits to work with. I'll share what to do, what not to do with these energies, and how you can best work with all of it. I'm Jeremy Devins. This is the Quietmind Astrology podcast. And if you're new here, get your free Vedic birth chart at quietmindastrology.com and look where these transits are affecting you, especially where the sign of Taurus and Gemini is in your chart, and Scorpio. We'll talk about those energies a lot this week for all of us, regardless if you have anything in those signs in your own chart. These energies affect all of us. And if you want to go deeper with me, then I have some special offers right now this week only for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. And those are to plan for the new year, to review the past year, to look at your energies coming up in the new year. And you can do that with the Mindful New Year workshop coming up on the 19th. Or you can do that with a one-to-one reading where we go really deep into your chart and whatever you want to focus on there. Or all the way into the Vedic Astrology Mentorship, which will be opening in January, but you can get in early now at quietmindastrology.com. And that's an amazing community that's been going for many years now, where we go really deep into learning astrology in depth, giving accurate readings and predictions, and giving great readings if you want to offer that as a service or just for yourself in the future. That's all at quietmindastrology.com/2026 if you want to check that out before the link expires. Now, this week, we are coming out of that passage of the Mercury retrograde and Saturn retrograde that we were going through. Saturn was many months, Mercury was 3 weeks. And now all of the inner planets, the main ones we can see with the naked eye that affect us most in our daily lives, are going direct, meaning that there's movement forward. And things that have been stuck in the past can now start to move forward and build and create and build new structures and growth in our lives. The only thing going retrograde is Jupiter, which is happening this week. Jupiter will move back a sign, but it's in Punarvasu nakshatra the whole way through this whole retrograde, even the last couple of weeks, and now in the next several weeks and months. So Jupiter retrograde is a slower transit. It goes several months, but in Punarvasu, that's about what brings us renewal and a sense of hope and optimism. So we are learning through lessons of the past and teachings and teachers and philosophies and wisdom that we are going back to. Maybe you picked up a little bit of a thread of something in the past, of something that's helpful. Now you're in that phase of really pulling that thread, of uncovering what's there, learning those lessons. And it's going to affect everyone different depending on what house your Cancer sign is in, and what house your Gemini sign is in, where Jupiter is going to go back to. This Friday, December 5th, Jupiter will move back to Gemini and stay there for a while, and all the way until June 1st, 2026. So Jupiter is currently had this short little visit in Cancer, bringing us a sense of potential possibility, what could be in our sense of nourishment, home, family, nurturing qualities in our lives. And it's just going to come back there in June 1st, 2026. So we had a little preview of what's to come in mid-26. Now we have to go back over lessons that we've learned over the past several months, like 4 or 5 months, and we're going to uncover new lessons there. Things to do with teachers in your life, your spiritual path, what philosophies or wisdom path you're following. The father energy, the paternal energy in your life, there's new, deeper insights coming through that part of your life, of understanding your relationship to your father and the father energy, the masculine energy in your life. That's been a really big part of my process. I've shared a bit on the podcast, and I'm doing some really deep work there as well. So this is great to do in therapeutic settings, therapy kind of work, to go back to the past of your relationship to the paternal energy in your life over the next few months though. Now it's in Punarvasu, which is a very renewing, generative, positive energy. We're fortunate that we get Jupiter going back and forth over Punarvasu and not Ardra in Gemini. That would be much more intense. Punarvasu is much more hopeful, optimistic, positive, renewal, regenerative kind of energy. So through slowing down and going back to teachers and teachings of the past, you will find renewal and optimism and hope for the future. I've talked to many people who've had a very intense 2025, and I also have had a very intense year. It's a 9-year in the Vedic numerology, meaning there's likely a lot of endings and completions of cycles that you've been going through this year. Next year will be a 1 year. So it's a new beginning, new potential. It's a very different energy coming in 2026. We'll talk about that at Mindful New Year coming up on December 19th. You can check that out at quietmindastrology.com/2026 to learn more about that. But as Jupiter goes back into Gemini now for these first few months of the year, it's a good time to return to things that intellectually stimulated you, ideas and insights that helped you grow. And if you're watching the video, Jupiter's going to move back to Gemini, but still in Punarvasu, still positive, still hopeful. And that hope can come through looking back to wisdom and teachings and ideas of the past. And that can help process what's happened in 2025. Jupiter is doing a thing where it's moving very quickly through a lot of signs over the next few years still. It's going to go forward and back. And usually it does that in one sign, but it's going through multiple signs in a year, which is unusual for Jupiter because it usually spends a year in a sign and then retrogrades in that sign and maybe changes the sign once a year. But this year has changed signs from Taurus to Gemini to Cancer, back to Gemini, all in 2025. And Jupiter has the energy of our optimism, our hope, our positivity, our growth. So it's been a bit of a ride for everybody for this. And then Saturn's in Pisces this year, we've talked about a lot, K2 and Leo. These things are sort of boundary blurring or destroying or ego death kind of energies of like, you're becoming a new person. And a phrase I've heard so many people say recently is like, I'm just not going to do X anymore. I'm not going to do this thing anymore. Like, I can't do it anymore. This pattern that doesn't serve me. I've got the lesson. I see it. I'm done with that thing. And that's the kind of energy of K2 and Leo. It's like letting go of an identity, a way of doing things, a way of being, that it's just time to let it go. And you can do that willingly and working with the universe, or you can do it unwillingly and painfully. And that's been a big part of my experience. Why I got so deep into astrology is because I saw those energies coming in my life and time to shift, time to change things. And I resisted and avoided, and then it just happened. And it wasn't so fun when it just happened. And like the metaphor people say sometimes, at first God or the universe throws a pebble and then a rock. And if you don't get the message still, it throws a boulder at you. And then you got the message. Okay, I get it. And I'm going to make the change. And that's what a big part of this year is for so many people with this K2 and Leo, Saturn and Pisces. It's like things that got to change. You got to change your attachments, your identity, and move into this new phase. And Jupiter is the only inner planet going retrograde right now. So it's pointing us back to, okay, well, what teachers, what paths have supported you? What have you learned that it's time to really integrate and apply and go back to and go deeper with? That's the big thing happening this week on Friday, December 5th. And again, that's going to stay Jupiter retrograde in Gemini for a while, and it's going to stay in Gemini all the way until June 1st, 26. The other notable transits this week are shorter term, and there's a very nice one. So the 3rd, the moon moves into Taurus, and basically that time, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, really good for nurturing activities and spa, healing, nourishing food, eating really good food, nice restaurants, however this looks for you, time in nature, whatever feels like nourishing, supportive, luxurious, quality, that's very good. But even like times 5, because on the 4th, the full moon is in Rohini. So we have a full moon in the moon's exaltation point. It's like the best full moon we can have in the positive sense, most auspicious. So eating good food, cooking good food, nourishing activities, quality time with family, spouse, and anything that like brings you the sense of enjoyment. So very nice energy on the 4th. But also with the full moon, it's always good on the full moon to be kind of mindful of your energy. The energy is heightened and you might not be thinking as clearly. There tends to be more accidents and emergency room visits on the full moons statistically. So there's a heightened energy, it's more alive energy, but it also is bringing light to things in the dark. So it can be a healing energy as well, with a lot of the Scorpio stuff going on, Sun in Scorpio, Mars there as well. So this can be transformative time for a lot of us. transformation through relationships going on this week, and some intense movements going on. So it's very good to do physical movement activities like vinyasa yoga or running or long walks, just to move the energy this week. And if you're subscribed to my emails, then I send out embodiment practices to do every week to like work with the energy. So it's not just in the mind, but something you can physically do through typically yoga practices that embody and work with the energy. As traditionally you learn yoga, Ayurveda, and Jyotish all together, the sister sciences. So overall, it's a very nice energy. The risks of this week here could be overindulgence with Moon and Taurus. Jupiter going back to Gemini can be a bit overwhelming, overstimulating. I've experienced anxiety at a heightened level this year. So Jupiter is generally considered the great benefic, all positive, all good stuff. But where it comes, it expands what's there. So when Jupiter moves to Gemini, and Gemini can be very dualistic, very open-minded, very creative, you can have too much of that, too much creativity, too many ideas, too open-minded, and then you feel like overwhelmed, and it's just overstimulating and anxiety provoking. So keep that in mind as you go through this week and the next several weeks while Jupiter is retrograde in Gemini, and all the way to June 1st while Jupiter is in Gemini. It'll go direct later, but this can be a overstimulating energy. Generally, this is a dissonant energy, Jupiter in Gemini. Jupiter is like the wisdom of a guru that's beyond what you can read in any book. And then Gemini is more like the ideas, the intellect, the creativity, the play, the things you would find in a book, right? So they are different forms of information and wisdom and knowledge. And they can be at odds with each other sometimes, where like if you just have an idea of how to ride a bike, but you've never ridden a bike, you don't actually have the Jupiter wisdom of how to ride a bike. You have the idea of how to ride a bike. Many years ago, I was trying to learn how to like wakeboard. So you're like on the back of a boat. You have a little board, and the boat kind of brings you up, and you hold on to this thing, and you're kind of surfing, but in the wake of the boat. And I was terrible at it. And everyone around me was really good at it. And they're like, "Oh, you just need to do this." And so like person A would give me their whole list of things. You need to do this and then that, and then don't do this. And I'd try it and I'd fall. And then, okay, person B comes in and they've got a different theory. Okay, actually you need to do that and that and that. And I try and I fall. Right. So they just had like, I actually had decades of experience doing this, and it was my first time. So they had the Jupiter wisdom, and they were trying to give me that, but I didn't have either. I didn't have the Mercury wisdom of what I'm doing. I didn't read anything about it, learn anything about it. And I didn't have the experience of the Jupiter embodied experience either. And I didn't keep practicing. So I only went out and tried once, but if I keep trying, then I will eventually get better. But I need both. I need the Mercury wisdom to kind of intellectualize, understand it, but then the Jupiter wisdom comes with time. And when somebody has the Jupiter wisdom, sometimes it can be hard to communicate or express their ideas. But all that to say, this energy can be a little bit at odds, and where you're wanting to have experiences and having lots of ideas. In a way, I see this showing up a lot in exactly right now in modern times, is people might have a really cool idea, like a business idea, and they just go on an AI tool like ChatGPT or Google's Gemini, fittingly enough. As Gemini, Jupiter's been in Gemini, and it's been a very good year for Google's Gemini app software. But you go on one of these tools and like you have an idea, and it just says, okay, here are the 10 steps to do this. And there's a long list of what to do. And I see people using these tools and then like not really doing anything with it. And it's just like a bunch of noise. And it's, again, just like when I was going on the wakeboard and they're like, okay, do A, B, C, D, don't do F and G. And I'm like, okay. And I try and I fall. It's like, well, they might be right. And that might be the good advice. And the AI tools might be giving good advice. But you've got to live it and experience it. And more and more and more, I think that's going to be the most valuable thing, is lived, embodied experience, that you can't just type it out really quickly or generate it from an app, but you have embodied and experienced it. And I know for myself is there's some really useful things and tools in AI, and I'm using it and it's helpful, but it's just making me almost hunger more for the human connection and actual talking to somebody who has lived that thing or experienced that thing even more, because the AI is just kind of an idea. It's like the Gemini part, which is it's valuable. We all have that. We have ideas, we have creativity, we have play, we have fun, but that's not experience and that's not embodiment. And that takes time and that takes a human limbic system and nervous system and a real embodied experience to have that and then to transmit it over time. And I know I'd be way more likely to learn wakeboarding working with those people who have the experience and letting them guide me over time than I would if I just watched a YouTube video or read a book or had a AI tool tell me what to do. Like those are all potentially helpful, useful things, but it's not the same as the embodied experience. And that's a big reason why I'm here, is because of what I'm sharing is something I've picked up and caught from my mentors and teachers. My yoga mentor would say, yoga is caught, not taught. So you can't just learn it from a book. You need to be around that field of people who have done it and live it, whether digitally, in person, however, but a real human being who's transmitting that energy, which can actually come through a book or a video or something, but it's even more powerful through the actual human interaction. So all that to say, whatever you're learning, whatever path you're on, it's a good time to actually be around the energy of what you want to create. If you want to learn astrology, be around astrologers. If you want to be fit and have a healthy body, be around fit people like at the gym. Be in that field, be in that energy, not just the idea. And we're in a time right now where people think like they can just generate an idea and like, oh my God, this is amazing. It can be, but it still has to be executed and embodied and experienced and lived before it really bears fruit. And the teachings of the Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita, it's like you do things for the love of the doing of it, not for the fruit of it, right? If you're unfulfilled in your purpose and your work, you're probably doing that work just for the money or the status or what people will say, what your parents will say about you, or whatever people judge about if you have this career or that career. Maybe if you're unfulfilled, that might be part of what's happening under there. And you're not really loving the process and the work itself. And in the Bhagavad Gita, it's all about like doing your duty, your dharma, your purpose for the love of the work. And you have a unique purpose. And maybe it's not coming out in your current job or income, but when you find it, it's like resonance and harmony, and you know it, and you just love to do it. And it's not about the outcome or the status or the money necessarily, but that's a nice byproduct of you doing what you love. That's part of the wisdom here as well of Jupiter and Gemini, is like there's so many ideas, so much potential, so much change in the world happening. So as AI and robotics have this bigger influence where they could replace a lot of jobs and things that people don't want to do, it becomes more and more important than ever, things like astrology, of like, what is your purpose? What do you want to express? What is the innate potential in your chart that you want to bring forth? This is the stuff we do in the one-on-one readings a lot and really deep in the mentorship. So if that's something you're curious about or wanting to explore for yourself, work with me in those ways, and I'd love to work with you and help you in that. That's like one of my biggest joys, because that was such a big question for me. And then when I met my Vedic astrologer, it was all like so obvious and clear. And like, okay, yeah, astrology, yoga, these are perfect paths for you. So the other big transit this week, the last one I'll talk about, is Mercury in Scorpio. So this happens on Saturday the 6th, when Mercury joins up in this stellium we've got going on in Scorpio to end this week and carry into next week. And a stellium is when we have multiple planets in a sign, 3 or more. And that energy now becomes very influential, very strong. And this energy is Scorpio. So that's transformation, personal growth, deep research, uncovering stuff under the surface. So I'm a big proponent of that. I've got a lot of 8th house energy in my chart. So my life is like a lot of transformation and growth. Anyone who has Scorpio 8th house stuff very strong, you tend to experience a lot of growth and change in your life. Sometimes I talk to people who I know, like they've got a lot of Capricorn earth signs and things like this in their chart, much more dominant. And they're like, why do you talk about all the transits every week? Like nobody's life changes that much. I was like, well, mine does. So I want to know what's going on. And like, I'm the first student of this podcast. I'm the first one who wants to know like what's going on every week. So it helps me process and work with the transformational energies that are there. And really, like nothing ever stays still. I learned this when I moved to the ocean, and like I never spent a lot of time by the ocean, and living by it, it's like it doesn't stop. Like it never stops. And we have this illusion of stillness on earth, but nothing really stops. Like everything's always moving. Your body's always heart beating and blood flowing, cells dividing and dying. Things are constantly in motion. It's just like how much are we moving with that? How much are we moving against it? How much are we attuned to it? Change is constantly coming. The moon is constantly moving. We're constantly spinning, revolving around the sun. It never stops. Like, there's not a point where the planets stop. So we keep moving. And with that, all that to say is the Scorpio energy is like that. It's about movement and transformation and growth, stirring things up and changing things. And again, we can do that in a way that's more subtle, of like just changing our mood through the day, our energy, changing where we walk through the day or the path we take to a routine habit. Or it could be really big, like changing a career or a relationship or where you live. And with the Scorpio energy so strong this week, you might feel a stronger drive to make a bigger change in your life. Changes in diet are very common around the new year. Changes in health and lifestyle, very common around the new year. This is very good for any sort of research, personal growth kind of stuff. But Mercury specifically coming here is like you want to talk about these things. You want to share ideas. You want to communicate about it. And it's ruling over this Jupiter energy. And Jupiter does not like to be ruled by Mercury. But this can be a very transformational week into next week as well. Next week also being very much this energy still going. So if there's something you want to learn, grow, transform, something that's stuck, it could get unstuck this week, especially through talking about it. If there's some conversation you need to have, especially in relationship, as Venus is here, this is very good. Luckily, Mars is just with this stellium for a brief stay, so it'll move on quickly next week into Sagittarius. But we do have Sun, Venus, Mercury here a little longer, so you may find power in personal power and empowerment in your relationships through just talking about things. If that could be a romantic spouse, friendships, business partnerships, any kind of relationship, but especially the spouse. And it's about finding what you really are devoted to, what really matters to you. It's very important at this time, and what goals you want to be moving towards. As you reach the full moon on the 4th, this is a great week to reflect on what's happened over the last month, set new intentions for the next month, especially things that are about transformation and growth in your life. And generally, the recommendation in Ayurveda is little, little, little. So if you're trying to, lose 50 pounds, maybe start with just adding an extra 10 minutes of walking a day. So it's a little transformation, and that will snowball likely. And it's way easier to start the little transformation, and it's way better for the body's natural drive towards homeostasis. Because if you say, okay, I'm going to change everything tomorrow, your homeostasis will basically say, no, we're going to go back to the way it was. And we're actually going to overcorrect and maybe go from a day where we work out all day to a day where we do nothing, and 2 days where we do nothing. So you don't want to disrupt the homeostasis of the system too much when making changes, but the Scorpio energy can be very disruptive. So it's important to do regulating things for your nervous system, like yoga, meditation, spiritual work. But to make those little movements and changes towards what you want. And we all have this sort of maybe idea in our mind of like, what would a 10 out of 10 health be for you? What would a 10 out of 10 relationship be for you? And it might be at a 5 or 6 or 7 out of 10 right now if you were to rate that. And what would it take to go to like a 7.1 or 5.1? It's just a baby step in that direction and continue to build on that. When you see the progress and you see that movement, and the full moons come around every month to like reflect of like, okay, what's happened in the last month? And what movement have I made? And what direction am I going towards the 10 out of 10 or the 1 out of 10? and we can start to move in the direction we want to be moving, just a little by little at a time. That's way more sustainable. And I see it all the time. People start, I'm going to go to the gym every day this year, and they go for 3 days, and then they don't go for 3 months. So we don't want to try to change everything dramatically immediately, especially into the new year. And we all know New Year's resolutions don't work. That's why I teach a different method at quietmindastrology.com and the Mindful New Year program that comes on this December 19th. But we do know from Ayurveda, in thousands of years of working with this energy, that little changes are much more sustainable, much more realistic, and much more able to build towards big changes over time. Now, I say all that, and I've had a lot of big changes in my life. Maybe you have too. But often those changes do actually start as little ideas, little desires, little impulses, and they might snowball very fast, but they also tend to be more sustainable when they are a little bit over time. And like for me, when I started yoga, I loved it. Wanted to do it every day. Started going like 3 times a week, 4 times a week, 5 times a week. Actually started with meditation before that. Meditation once a week, and then it snowballed, and eventually yoga every day. And today it's shorter practices a lot of times, but still that movement was slow and steady. And now it's just like a big part of my essence and my embodiment and my experience, because it slowly built over time. And that's an example I've experienced. Maybe you have many examples yourself you can think of how you made small changes and they build up over time. But this week, just know there might be a need for more drastic change coming next week. Really, it's next week, from Saturday the 6th, when we have this big stellium. We already do have a stellium in Scorpio, so we've had some big movement coming, but Mercury also can bring a lot of quick changes and insights as well as the messenger. So you might be getting some really interesting insights and downloads the 6th through next week with all this Scorpio energy. So hopefully this is helpful for you. If you found it helpful, let me know in the YouTube comments and Spotify comments. And if there's something you want to see on future episodes, please let me know. I'm happy to provide those for you. And if you want to go deeper with all this and plan for the new year, review the past year, that's at Mindful New Year, quietmindastrology.com/2026. Or you can choose to get the one-on-one reading with me as well and go deeper into your dashas, D9, transits, everything for the year ahead, the major annual chart, the Varshpal. And then if you want to go all the way full on into everything about astrology, that's at the Vedic Astrology Mentorship. That's where I share the best of everything I've learned in all my years of study. quietmindastrology.com/2026. Have a great week and look forward to sharing more with you next time on the Quiet Mind Astrology Podcast.